Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Jason Carter had a routine that ran like a Swiss watch. Every morning at 6:40, he'd head down to the kitchen of his house in Cherry Creek, Denver, brew fresh coffee and whole wheat toast while Rebecca finished getting ready upstairs. At 38, Jason was a financial analyst at one of the city's top brokerage firms, and he'd built a life that seemed to follow a perfect script: 7 years of marriage, a home in an upscale neighborhood, career stability, and an enviable social circle. Rebecca, his 35-year-old wife, worked as a freelance graphic designer, giving her the flexible schedule and freedom she'd always wanted. That Tuesday in October, everything seemed perfectly normal. Autumn had painted the neighborhood trees in golden and orange hues, and the mild weather made mornings especially pleasant. Rebecca came downstairs with her usual style, brown hair tied in a messy bun, wearing black leggings and an oversized gray sweater. She grabbed the coffee cup Jason had prepared, took a quick sip, and sat at the kitchen table with her phone in hand. Her eyes were glued to the screen, lit by that familiar bluish glow of someone absorbed in digital conversation. Jason was spreading butter on his toast when he heard Rebecca say, without looking up from her phone, "So Friday I'm going out with the girls. Dinner and drinks at that new place on Larimer Street Jess mentioned." The sentence came out casual, offhand, like someone mentioning a trip to the grocery store. Jason chewed slowly, tasting the butter blend with something bitter that suddenly filled his mouth. It wasn't the coffee. It was memory. 3 days earlier, on Saturday night, Jason had picked up Rebecca's phone to check the time of a movie she'd mentioned earlier. The phone had been unlocked on the coffee table while she was in the shower. It wasn't intentional, not planned, but his eyes caught a notification sliding across the screen. A message. The name displayed was just E, followed by a fire emoji. The preview read, Friday, 8 p.m., The Maven. Suite 412. Can't wait. At that moment, Jason felt something strange churn in his stomach, but Rebecca stepped out of the shower seconds later wrapped in steam and perfume, so he decided maybe he'd misread it, maybe it was work-related, maybe it was anything but what his mind was starting to whisper. But now, as Rebecca mentioned dinner with her friends on Friday, the same Friday, Jason knew something was deeply wrong. The Maven was a boutique hotel downtown, not a restaurant. Suite 412 wasn't a dinner table. And that E with the fire emoji definitely wasn't Jessica or any of her other friends. Jason forced a smile. Cool, have fun. I'll just stay home anyway, I've got some reports to review. Rebecca just nodded, already typing another message, her lips curved in a small smile he didn't recognize as being meant for him. She finished her coffee quickly, grabbed her bag and keys. I'm heading to the studio, got a client meeting at 10. She kissed the top of his head without really looking at his face and walked out through the garage door. The silence left in the kitchen was thick. Jason stayed seated, his toast forgotten on the plate, staring at the spot where Rebecca had been seconds before. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of full trust, shared dreams, and building a life together. The doubt that had taken root in his chest on Saturday now bloomed into toxic certainty. He wasn't the kind of man to wait. Not when it came to important decisions. His career had been built on rapid data analysis and decisive action. He picked up his phone and dialed Martin Hayes, a private investigator his firm had occasionally used for due diligence on complex deals. Martin's deep voice answered on the third ring. Jason Carter, what a surprise. What can I do for you? I need a discreet job. Personal, not professional. Jason heard his own voice sound steady, even though his hands trembled slightly. Martin didn't ask unnecessary questions. Good professionals never do. They arranged to meet that same afternoon at a cafe far from downtown. At 3 p.m., Jason handed Martin all the information he had: Rebecca's full name, her car's license plate, her usual schedule, and the message about the Maven on Friday. Martin, a man in his mid-50s with gray hair and eyes that had seen far too much of human nature, merely nodded. 48 hours. I'll have answers for you. They were the longest 48 hours of Jason's life. He returned home each night to find Rebecca there, cooking dinner, telling him about her day, laughing at something silly on TV. She looked like the same woman he'd married. But now Jason noticed details he'd previously overlooked, the way she smiled at her phone, how she took it into the bathroom even when just brushing her teeth, how her eyes sparkled in a way he could no longer associate with himself. On Thursday night, Martin called. "I've got material. A lot of it. Do you want me to deliver it in person?" Jason felt the ground sway beneath his feet. "Tomorrow morning. The cafe near your office." Martin hesitated. "Jason, brace yourself. It's not easy." Friday, 7 a.m. Martin slid a manila envelope across the cafe table. Inside were photographs, many photographs. Martin explained that, in addition to tailing her over the past 2 days, he'd gotten access to the hotel's security footage through an inside contact, covering the previous week. Rebecca entering the Maven on Tuesday afternoon. Rebecca leaving the Maven 2 hours later, hair tousled, smile on her face. More photos from Monday. Sunday. The pattern was clear, methodical, repeated. But it was the final sequence of photos that made Jason's world collapse completely. They were images taken on Wednesday. Rebecca arriving at the hotel. Then, a few minutes later, another car pulling in. A black Audi Jason would recognize anywhere, he'd helped pick it out himself 3 years earlier. Stepping out of the car with that confident smile and long strides was Ethan Pierce. Ethan. His best friend since college. The groomsman at his wedding. The man who'd given an emotional toast at the reception about loyalty and lifelong friendship. The guy who spent Sundays watching football in Jason's living room, attended every barbecue, every celebration, every New Year's Eve. Ethan, who'd been married to Sarah for 6 years and had a 4-year-old daughter. Jason stared at the photos until his vision blurred. Martin placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, man. I really am." Jason just nodded, unable to form words. He paid Martin in silence and left the cafe, holding the envelope like it was a grenade about to explode. Back in his car, Jason sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, taking deep breaths, trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal. It wasn't just Rebecca breaking vows. It was Ethan destroying 15 years of friendship. It was the humiliation of imagining how many times they'd laughed behind his back, how many times Ethan had been in his home fully aware of what he was doing with his wife. Anger came slowly, but when it arrived, it was cold and crystal clear. Jason wasn't a man of explosions. He was a man of planning. He grabbed his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. Sarah Pierce answered with her ever-cheerful voice. "Jason. Everything okay?" "Sarah, I need to talk to you. In person. It's urgent, and it's about Ethan." Jason's tone made her smile vanish from her voice. "What happened? Is he okay?" "He's fine. Physically. But I need to show you something. Can you meet me now?" An hour later, Jason sat in the Pierces' living room while their daughter played upstairs. Sarah held the same photographs that had shattered Jason just hours earlier, silent tears streaming down her face. She didn't say anything for long minutes, just stared at the images of her husband entering and exiting that hotel. Finally, her voice breaking, Sarah spoke. "How long?" "I'm not sure exactly. But these photos are from last week. And there's more." Jason took a deep breath. "Rebecca told me this morning she was going out with her friends tonight." Martin confirmed she booked the same suite for tonight. 8 p.m. Sarah wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and Jason saw something shift in her eyes. Her pain gave way to cold determination. "They'll be there tonight?" "Yes." "Then we will too." 6 hours of silent preparation followed. Jason went home at noon and found Rebecca getting ready for her night out with the girls. She was radiant, wearing a navy blue dress Jason had bought her for her birthday, heels, flawless makeup. "You look beautiful," he said, and it was true. She smiled and kissed his cheek. "Thanks, love. Don't wait up, okay?" Jason just nodded, watching her walk out the door with a small purse that certainly didn't hold just lipstick and a wallet. When the sound of her car faded down the street, he went upstairs and carefully chose his own clothes. Black dress pants, a gray shirt, a blazer. He wanted to look presentable for the moment his marriage officially ended. At 7:40 p.m., Jason parked 3 blocks from the Maven. Sarah was waiting in her own car, eyes red but posture upright. They met on the sidewalk. "You sure?" Jason asked. Sarah nodded. "Absolutely." Martin had given Jason a copy of the keycard to Suite 412. It wasn't legal, not ethical, but at that moment, Jason didn't care about either. They entered the hotel through the elegant lobby, decorated in grays and golds, past the front desk clerk who didn't give them a second glance, and rode the elevator up in heavy silence. On the 4th floor, the hallway smelled of lavender air freshener and betrayal. Jason stopped in front of room 412. He could hear muffled voices inside, a feminine laugh he'd recognize anywhere. Sarah stood beside him, fists clenched. He looked at her. "Ready?" She nodded. Jason slid the keycard, the green light blinked, and he pushed the door open. The suite was spacious, dominated by a king-sized bed, decorated in modern neutral tones, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Denver. But Jason barely registered the details. His attention was entirely focused on the 2 entangled bodies on the bed, who jerked apart when the door opened. Rebecca screamed, pulling the sheets to cover herself. Ethan froze, eyes wide with absolute shock. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was deafening. Jason stepped inside, Sarah right behind him. When Ethan saw his own wife, all color drained from his face. "Sarah." "No," Sarah cut in, voice trembling but firm. "Don't say my name. Don't you dare." Rebecca was fully covered now, sitting on the bed with her knees pulled to her chest, smudged makeup, looking between Jason and Sarah like a trapped animal. "Jason, I can explain." Jason let out a humorless laugh, a harsh sound that echoed through the suite. "Explain? Which part exactly, Rebecca? The part where you told me you were having dinner with the girls? Or the part where you're sleeping with my best friend?" He made air quotes around "best friend," sarcasm dripping like poison. Ethan had gotten up, quickly pulling on his pants. "Jason, man, just let me. Don't call me the man." Jason's voice was ice. "Men don't do this to other men. Men don't spend Sundays at your house while planning to sleep with your wife. How long, Ethan? How long have you looked me in the eye, shaken my hand, drunk my beer, while betraying me?" Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Rebecca was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Jason, please, just listen." 7 years, Jason continued, his voice rising. 7 years of marriage. 15 years of friendship. And you destroyed it all for what? A string of hotel hookups? Did you think I'd never find out? That I was too dumb to notice? Sarah had moved closer to the bed, looking at Ethan with a mixture of disgust and pain. "You have a daughter, Ethan. A daughter who adores you. How could you?" "Sarah, I love you both, I swear," Ethan began, voice desperate. "You don't know the meaning of that word," Sarah spat. "If you did, you wouldn't be here." Rebecca had gotten off the bed, wrapped in the sheet, trying to approach Jason. "Jason, please, this was a mistake, I don't know what." "How long?" Jason interrupted, staring directly into her eyes. I want the truth. How long has this been going on? Rebecca hesitated, biting her lip. 6 months, she whispered. The number landed like a bomb. 6 months. Half a year. 180 days of lies. Jason felt something inside him snap, something he knew would never be repaired. 6 months. And you slept next to me every night. Kissed me every morning. Said you loved me. I love you. Rebecca protested, voice shrill. This thing with Ethan doesn't mean. Doesn't mean what? Jason took a step toward her, stopping just inches away. Doesn't mean you broke every promise you made? Doesn't mean you turned our marriage into a joke? Tell me, Rebecca, what exactly doesn't this mean? She had no answer. She just sobbed, the sheet slipping off her shoulders. That's when Jason noticed something. A small detail, but devastating. On Rebecca's wrist, he recognized the bracelet Ethan had given Sarah on her last birthday. He pointed. That's Sarah's. Rebecca looked at her wrist, paling even more. Sarah saw the bracelet and a look of pure betrayal crossed her face. He gave you my bracelet? The one I lost 3 months ago? Ethan was leaning against the wall, looking like he wished he could disappear into it. Sarah, You stole it from me to give it to her? Sarah's voice rose an octave. You stole it from your wife to give it to your mistress? The word mistress hung in the air like toxic smoke. Rebecca ripped the bracelet off her wrist and threw it to the floor. I didn't know it was yours, I swear. Of course you knew, Jason said calmly. You've known Sarah for years. You've seen her wear that bracelet dozens of times. You both knew exactly what you were doing. Ethan finally found his voice, pitiful and broken. Jason, I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. Happened? Jason laughed again, that joyless sound. 6 months don't just happen, Ethan. 6 months are a choice. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, you chose this. You chose to betray me. You chose to betray Sarah. You chose to destroy 2 families. 2 families. Rebecca repeated, confused. Sarah crossed her arms. I'm pregnant, Rebecca. 10 weeks. He was about to be a dad again, but he was too busy here with you to notice the signs. The silence that followed was absolute. Ethan looked at Sarah as if seeing her for the first time. You're pregnant? I was planning to tell you this weekend, Sarah said, voice choked. I'd even bought a special gift for our daughter, a big sister t-shirt. What a fool I was. Rebecca had sat on the floor now, still wrapped in the sheet, reality crashing down on her. Jason, I need to tell you something too. Her voice was a fragile whisper. Jason looked at her, expecting another lie, another excuse. Rebecca took a deep breath, tears streaming. I'm pregnant too. The world stopped. Jason felt like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. What did you say? I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. Jason looked at Ethan, then back at Rebecca. The question he didn't want to ask slipped out anyway, is it mine? Rebecca sobbed harder. I don't know. Those 4 words were the final destruction. Jason had walked into that suite thinking nothing could be worse than catching his wife with his best friend. He'd been wrong. She was carrying a child that might not be his, born of a 6-month affair he never even knew existed. He stepped back, needing physical distance from it all. Sarah was silently crying now, one hand resting on her own belly. Ethan had slumped into a chair, head in his hands. Rebecca remained on the floor, shattered. DNA test, Jason said, his voice completely devoid of emotion. As soon as the baby's born, we'll do a DNA test. And you, he looked at Ethan, will take one too. Jason, Rebecca began. No. It's over. We're done. Jason slid his wedding ring off his finger, looked at it for a second, that golden circle that once symbolized eternal promises, and placed it on the nightstand. My lawyer will contact you Monday. You'll sign the divorce papers, or it'll go much worse for you. He turned to Sarah. Do you need a ride? Sarah wiped her tears. No. I drove. But thanks. Jason nodded and started walking toward the door. Rebecca crawled a few feet. Jason, please don't leave like this. We can talk this through, we can try. He stopped but didn't turn. There's nothing to talk through, Rebecca. You made your choice. 6 months of choices. Now you'll live with the consequences. But what if the baby is yours? She practically shouted. Jason finally looked back, and what she saw in his eyes made her recoil. It wasn't anger. It was emptiness. Then that child will grow up knowing her mother is someone you can't trust. And she'll have court-ordered visitation, because you'll never live under the same roof as me again. Sarah had picked up her purse and was now beside Jason. She looked at Ethan one last time. 15 years together. 6 years of marriage. A beautiful daughter. A baby on the way. And you threw it all away. I hope it was worth it. Ethan was crying now too, silent tears rolling down his face. Sarah, please. My lawyer will call Monday as well, Sarah said coldly. And you can be sure I'll fight for every penny, every asset, every moment with our kids. You won't destroy their lives the way you destroyed ours. Jason and Sarah left the suite together, leaving behind 2 broken people and a hotel room that smelled of expensive perfume and broken promises. In the hallway, as they walked toward the elevator, Sarah finally collapsed, leaning against the wall as she sobbed. Jason stayed beside her, not touching her, just present, 2 survivors of the same shipwreck. How do we move forward from here? She asked through tears. One day at a time, Jason replied. One day at a time. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and ongoing revelations. Jason's attorney, a serious man named Robert Kushner who specialized in Colorado family law, was straightforward. With photographic evidence and testimony from a private investigator, the divorce would be swift and favorable to Jason. Rebecca had no legal ground to contest it. But the financial investigation uncovered yet another layer of betrayal. Over the past 6 months, Rebecca had withdrawn small but consistent amounts from their joint account, $20 here, $50 there, never enough for Jason to notice. Combined, the hidden expenses totaled over $5,000 spent on clothing, hotels, dinners, and gifts that never came home. She'd been funding her own affair with her husband's money. Jason also discovered Ethan had lied about several business trips over recent months. Calls to his office confirmed he'd taken multiple undeclared days off, days that aligned perfectly with Rebecca's absences. Sarah, meanwhile, hired a lawyer known for being absolutely relentless in custody cases. Her pregnancy significantly strengthened her position, especially given Ethan's behavior. Their daughter, Emma, still knew nothing, but Sarah was carefully planning how and when to tell her. 3 weeks after the hotel confrontation, Jason sat in his new apartment, a minimalist space in Lodo he'd rented until the divorce was finalized and the house sold, when his phone rang. It was Martin, the investigator. Jason, I thought you should know. They're not together anymore. What do you mean? Rebecca and Ethan. It's over. Or rather, he broke up with her. Apparently, once it stopped being exciting and secret, once it became a real problem with real consequences, he wanted out. Jason felt no satisfaction hearing the news. Just deep emptiness. And her? She's staying with her mom. Lost 2 big clients who were mutual friends of yours. The news spread fast, you know how it is. Tight-knit community. Jason knew. Over the past few days, he'd received dozens of messages from mutual friends, some offering support, others just curious, some taking sides. He'd replied to few, keeping things minimal. Public humiliation was bad enough without him adding fuel to the fire. And Ethan? Jason asked. Sarah's staying temporarily with her parents. The divorce is moving fast. She'll keep the house and primary custody of Emma. Ethan will start with a more restricted visitation schedule, pending court evaluation, until he proves he can truly be a present and stable father. And as for the new baby, Martin paused. Sarah made it clear he'll have minimal paternal rights unless he shows real change. Jason thanked Martin and hung up. He looked around the empty apartment, white walls with no decoration, basic furniture bought in haste. It was so different from the home he'd shared with Rebecca, filled with photos, memories, life. But that house had been a lie. This empty apartment was truth. His phone buzzed again. A message from Rebecca, "I need to talk to you." About the baby. Jason stared at the message for a long time before replying, "Through our lawyers. Any communication about the child will be documented and legal. We'll schedule a paternity test as soon as it's allowed." Her response came quickly, "Jason, please, it doesn't have to be like this." He typed and deleted 3 different replies before finally writing, "You're the one who made it like this. 6 months of choices. These are the consequences." She didn't respond. The divorce process moved surprisingly fast by Colorado standards. With photographic evidence, financial records, and no serious challenge from Rebecca, it was finalized in 4 months. The house was sold, assets divided, and Jason walked away with significantly more than Rebecca, both financially and reputationally. The baby was born in May, a girl Rebecca named Lily. The paternity test, conducted 2 weeks after birth, confirmed what Jason had already suspected deep down: he wasn't the biological father. Ethan was. The news should have brought relief, no permanent tie to Rebecca, but all Jason felt was deep sadness for an innocent child born from the ruins of lies. Sarah had a boy in June, whom she named Oliver. Ethan was present at the birth, trying to rebuild bridges, but Sarah maintained clear emotional distance. She allowed him to see the kids and honored the custody agreement, but the woman who'd loved Ethan for 15 years no longer existed. On a July afternoon, just over a year after that devastating Friday at the Maven, Jason sat in a Capitol Hill cafe reviewing investment spreadsheets when someone pulled out the chair across from him. He looked up and saw Sarah, thinner than he remembered, with deep under-eye circles but a genuine smile. "Hi," she said simply. "Hi. How are you?" "Surviving. You?" "Same." They talked for an hour, about the kids, careers, therapy, both were in it, and the challenges of rebuilding after emotional earthquakes. They didn't speak directly about Rebecca or Ethan, but their shadows hovered over every sentence. When they parted, Sarah lightly touched Jason's arm. "Thank you. For that night. For not letting me find out alone." Jason just nodded. "We deserved to know the truth." "Yes. We did." She walked off, and Jason watched through the cafe window as she disappeared into the summer afternoon crowd. 2 strangers bound by betrayal, trying to figure out how to be whole again. 6 months later, Jason was in his new apartment, this one permanent, purchased, carefully decorated over months, when he received an unexpected message. It was from Rebecca. "Ethan and I are trying again. He wants to be a present father to Lily. I thought you should know." Jason read the message 3 times. He'd expected to feel anger, maybe even satisfaction that they were stuck with each other now. But he felt none of that. Just indifference. Those people were no longer part of his life. They were ghosts from a closed chapter. He deleted the message without replying and returned to his book. Outside, Denver sparkled under city lights, full of possibilities and fresh starts. Jason didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if he'd ever fully trust someone again. He didn't know if the scars of betrayal would ever fully fade. But he knew one thing: he'd survived. He'd looked straight at the destruction of his marriage, the betrayal of his best friend, the humiliation and pain, and he'd chosen to move forward with dignity. He hadn't sought revenge through violence. He hadn't lost himself in destructive bitterness. He'd simply removed toxic people from his life and rebuilt from scratch. And maybe, Jason thought as he turned the page of his book, that was the greatest victory possible, not their destruction, but his reconstruction. Not stooping to the level of betrayal, but rising above it. Ethan and Rebecca would have to live with their choices, the child born of their affair, their damaged reputations, the lost trust of everyone around them. Jason had something better: peace. Not complete peace yet, not full happiness, but the beginning of something real and true. And after everything that had happened, that was more than enough. At the bottom of his desk drawer, he still kept the envelope with Martin's photographs. Sometimes he'd pull them out, not out of masochism, but as a reminder. A reminder that trust is a precious gift given only to those who prove they deserve it. A reminder that the worst betrayals come from those closest to you. A reminder that survival itself is a form of triumph. And when, years later, Jason eventually met someone new, a woman who brought genuine light to his eyes and slowly, brick by brick, earned his trust, he was able to love again, but with wisdom forged through pain. He'd never be naive again. But he wouldn't be cynical either. He'd found balance between openness and protection, between trusting and verifying. Rebecca and Ethan became footnotes in his story, not main chapters. And maybe that was the best revenge possible, making them irrelevant. Not hated, not loved, just irrelevant. Part of a past that taught valuable lessons but no longer controlled the present. Jason closed his book and looked out the window. Life went on. Denver went on. He went on. And that, finally, was enough. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.